So I prepared a short presentation about one aspect of operational design that we developed. Let's talk today a little bit about the way we've organized ourselves at ASU, and then we can hopefully localize it. We know you've got some unique situations, and as you were saying, funding is always kind of open for government challenge. So let's take a quick look at this, and then we'll come back and answer all the questions. So we've been looking at putting together a new design framework. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of it so you have a context in your mind. We've got leadership and culture, operational design, financial management, then course creation, student services, educational technology, and faculty development. I hope you recognize all of these as critical for the e-learning initiative. The two that are most challenging to most partners and even to most universities in the United States are operational design and financial management, because that's where the organization has to adapt. And then there's a lot of challenges there. Course creation, student services, educational technology, and faculty development. We've already spent a lot of time on those over the past 12 months. So we're going to dig in today on operational design, things like the policy environment, governance, mission statement, thinking about how you define e-learning and what that means in terms of your future development, strategies and tactics, design principles, market analysis, new program planning, communication. Those are some of the topics that we had identified in operational design as we were starting to outline that particular category. There may be others. We're working constantly to keep up with the needs of our partners, and sometimes we find there's a topic we hadn't thought about that's really important to you. So as we go, you can help identify where any gaps might exist. We look at this as an evolution, really. And as you think about where USIU Africa is, as you look at starting, scaling, and sustaining, these are large categories of development. For example, Arizona State now is in the sustaining mode. We've already developed 300 online degree programs, and you know the whole story there. So you're in probably a scaling mode at USIU because you have some of your infrastructure in place. And most of the partners in the e-learning initiative are in the starting mode. We understand that they're still trying to figure out where to focus and how to make some progress on this. So for us, it's really about localization and making sure that you're getting what you need from these processes. This is really a conversation that is important to every organization to have internally as you think about where are you in your evolution in the different areas. So today we'll look at operational design as one component of this process. And I want to focus on a fully online degree model. This is something very important. I was talking with Rwanda. Rwanda does not want to do fully online degrees. They want to do a blended degree with the courses that are blended. So for them, the operational needs are different than, let's say, Arizona State or USIU. And as you pick your focus area, that's going to really determine what type of operational design you have. Now, we had a specific objective that was set by our leadership to have 140,000 degree-seeking students. We had a lot of barriers in our organization and in our infrastructure to getting to that number. For example, we didn't have enough classroom space. Our limitation is about 80,000 students in terms of classroom space. So in order to reach 140,000, we had to do something different. As you think about your objectives and your university mission, how you define the role of e-learning is really dependent upon these kinds of conversations. So for us, it became imperative to do fully online degrees, because there was no way we were going to reach our objective simply by building more buildings. We don't have money for that. So as you know, we've grown dramatically online over the past 14 years. Really, we started in 2009 with a transformation in leadership and in our design principles. And since then, we've grown dramatically. And as you'll also notice here, most of our growth has been online, very little growth on campus, just because of those limitations. So as you think about your role and your future design, this could be something that also drives you to develop more and more online degree programs. Now, the design principles that we developed around 2009, 2010 are focused on helping organize our operations. So as you think about USIU Africa, you should come up with a list of design principles that you can share with your colleagues so that they understand the context for your e-learning initiative. Academic units manage both of our online and campus programs. There are universities in the United States where there are two different organizations. One provides online learning and one provides on-campus learning. And they have different academic leadership. So we didn't do that. We decided to do an integrated model. And that's why this is an important principle. You may decide you have a different need and a different model. The second principle that was critical is we have exactly the same curriculum, faculty, and assessments. We did not want to create an online degree program that had some standard that was different. Everything is the same, so that the only variables are modality and technology. Instead of a classroom, we have the LMS. Instead of face-to-face meetings, we have online chat and discussion boards and activities. So hold something constant, vary the modality. The third thing we developed was what we call the firewall. This was important because during the initial conversations, many academic leaders were afraid that the on-campus students would move to online and they would create a competition between our own student populations. So we created this firewall that says, when you enroll in an online degree program, you cannot enroll in a campus course. There's just no natural path. If you want to change from an online student to an on-campus student, you go through a request process. And once you move to campus, then you do not enroll in the online program again. So two different operating structures under one academic umbrella. That was important, again, for the academic leadership to know that they were supported. The fourth principle, which is something that always comes up for discussion, but has been very key to our growth, is asynchronous model. We cannot allow our faculty to require any synchronized meetings, because that would create a problem for our students who were in different places in the world. If we have a student in Kenya and the faculty member says you have to be in a Zoom call at 9 a.m. on Monday, that could be a real big problem. Another student located in, let's say, Korea, another student located in Finland, all of those students are on different times, and that would create a problem for them. So always using asynchronous as our model. And then we don't want to have to put any pressure on them to ever come to campus. Everything from their first inquiry to their graduation is online. They are never required to come for paperwork, for testing, for graduation. That's part of this structure of principles. And then finally, we have a unique situation in America where students that live in the state of Arizona typically pay less than students who live in California but come to study in Arizona, or live in Colorado or Texas or New York and come to study in Arizona. So that two-tier pricing model was not going to work online because students are everywhere. 3/4 of our online students live outside of Arizona. So we had to come up with a new pricing model that said all of the students will pay the same price regardless of where they live for the online program. All of these things evolved over time, and the conversations are very difficult, you can imagine. There are many, many more decisions that have to be made on policies and other principles, but you should start having some type of conversation around this so your operational design has consistency over time. If you're going to grow over the next 10 years online, you're going to need stability in order to scale. So this helped us a lot. The next piece of the puzzle was a central service unit. This is a Ed Plus, as you know, is an integral part of this story. The use of a service unit that helps the academic unit has given us a big boost in our capabilities, because these are specialists who understand the online student and can scale the model. So that's kind of the first operational piece of the puzzle. Now, when we start looking at different components of this, we have to answer the question, who is responsible for what? So I give you here, for example, a list of different operational challenges. Who's going to be responsible for governance, new program research, academic program launch, marketing, enrollment management, admissions? When you're dealing with a fully online degree program, these issues get very complicated very quickly because you have many different types of parties, interested parties. So program governance, we had to have our provost as part of the governing body. So it's the president, provost, the dean of the online program, and several other academic leaders that form that leadership body. For new program research, Ed Plus does that work because they have special skills and they have relationships with the marketing firms to do that research. For academic program launch, we need both the academic unit and Ed Plus collaborating. As they build the new courses, they have to have a harmonized operating model. And we've shared with you already the memoranda of understanding between these different groups. So you have a memorandum of understanding between the academic unit and Ed Plus, and then you have a memoranda of understanding between the college or school and Ed Plus as part of this program. So there are multiple layers to these issues as well. For marketing, Ed Plus has again, specialized skill set, especially online marketing, which is very different from our traditional marketing. When we used to market to high school students, we would send people to the high school and they would talk with the students and they would develop a relationship with those students, and then the students would enroll in university. Now we're doing all of that digitally. We have outsourced marketing for the last 13 years to a company called Pearson. They had specialized marketing and student recruitment skills. So we had used them as our partner in this process, one of several. Enrollment management is done by Ed Plus, and I'll talk about that in an organizational sense in a minute, what that means. But again, specialized for online. And then finally, admission decision is the academic unit. They are the final arbiter of the academic quality. So if they would not admit a student into their campus program, then they should not admit that student into their online program. This is one of those fundamental principles that we think of as equivalency of that degree. And the last piece that I would mention about that is the degree does not say online anywhere. The diploma simply says Bachelor of Science in Biology from Arizona State University. So there is no indication that you were fully online or fully on campus. Now, when we talk about this enrollment management, and I had highlighted enrollment management on this page because I wanted to give you a sense of how this is such an important part of the Ed Plus mission. Each of these steps, from RFI, which is request for information online, through interested, prospect, applicant, admit, enrolled, has to be organized and has to be managed. Now, if we delegated this to our academic units, we would have to replicate this expertise 100 times over because we have such a vast array and diversity of academic programs. They would never be able to be an expert in this. And then there's a movement, the student from enrolled student through their academic program to graduation. So there's two halves to this process. And Ed Plus serves as the foundation for this whole tracking system. So what I want to do here is highlight the technology a little bit. Within that process, there are lots of different pieces of technology. And as you start to think about how do you become an expert in online operations, you have to spend time looking at each of these areas. So for example, you'll notice on here, there's Google Analytics, there's Salesforce, there's Amazon Web Services, there is Tableau, which is a database reporting and query system. On the other side, in the enrolled student area, we have things like the LMS, Learning Analytics, the Data Lake. Each of these components is managed by Ed Plus as part of their operating environment. So the message for the fully online degree model is you are going to need to think about how to build expertise in these different areas. And if it's outsourced to someone, then you need to be able to manage that and control it. If it's insourced, then you know how to manage it yourself. You'll notice over here on the very left-hand side, there's Pearson, a little tiny logo under the Start Here box. That's the piece I was talking about that we had outsourced to Pearson. So they would do marketing to get requests for information. And we pay them based on their performance in generating leads to enroll in our programs. Now, I wanted to also talk a little bit about what do I mean when I say manage the operation of enrollment management. So we're very, very deep now into the operational design of this. What we see here is the number of people who showed interest, just looking at this list, for example, from interest to enrolled. And then at the very bottom, how many of those 47,757 people actually enrolled at the end of the day? Each of those steps is managed by the Ed Plus team. And within this, you can see the conversion rate, the CVR, at each step. The biggest drop really is in that first step, from interest to prospect. Lots of people visit our website. Lots of people ask for information. Very few people are serious. And you can see only 3.45% of those people were serious. So you have to be looking for large volumes of interested people in order to convert a relatively small number. Only 1.76% of that total population converted into a student. This is why specialization is critical when you start thinking about the operational design of your organization. Now, if you say, we don't want to do all of that, then you have to find a partner, because you're going to need these kinds of marketing efforts in order to get to your goal of growing your programs and building your operation. Now, here's a generic organizational structure. You'll see that some of these categories in the area you would recognize, like chief of staff, you've got a financial group, then you've got the academic services group. That's where the instructional designers are. That's where our academic program onboarding occurs, and student services. Then you've got operations and marketing. And the piece that I've been talking about primarily here has been in the lower right-hand corner, where we're talking about recruitment, call center operations, retention, call center operations, internet marketing, other marketing, new program market research. All of these areas did not exist in our university before 2009. So as you think about your future operation, you will be creating new operating units that you never imagined you needed. We never thought we would need an internet marketing team until we realized that we couldn't get the growth without them. As you look at the dynamics in the market in East Africa, and you're looking at student populations and marketing opportunities and online degree structure, you have to keep in mind there will be boxes on this org chart that you don't have, but that you should be thinking about long term. As I mentioned at the start, we could spend an entire week probably talking about each of these boxes. So I'm sure as we move further and further into these conversations, you'll ask questions about, tell us more about program onboarding, or tell us more about your web development team. We'll be happy to do that. But I just wanted to give you that overview to start so that you could organize your own thoughts in this, initially making sure that you have a big picture, because it's hard sometimes to imagine how all of these different components will fit together. So let me pause there and open up the conversation so that you can follow up if there are specific questions.
You said Pearson do marketing for you?
Yes.
Do they do the same thing like Coursera?
They have their, they call it the OPM, Online Program Management. Coursera also does marketing for online programs that they host. So Pearson, they'll do it for anybody. Coursera will only do it for the Coursera programs. And we do have Coursera hosted programs. We have the fully online degree model is an academic credential. We also have the non-credential programs, for example, a specialized program for nurses, and they do not receive a degree. We host those kinds of programs on Coursera and OpenEdX because it's easier to scale. They have designed their platforms for rapid growth. We have probably hundreds of courses in Coursera now that are unique individual courses that do not connect to a degree program.
Okay.
Now, if you're thinking about Coursera as your online program manager, they will do entire degree programs. You can do that. And so it's a question in your financial model of how much money you want to pay to an online program manager. For example, I'm working with a university in the United States. They have 3 OPMs. They use Coursera, Wiley, and 2U. And they pay sometimes as much as 60% of their revenue to the OPM to provide hosting, marketing, student administration, all of those things that you might need. 60% of your revenue is a lot. And that's something that
Yeah.
you might say we can do it cheaper at USIU.
Mhm.
In our history, I didn't really talk about this, but when we started, we were outsourcing a lot of these activities. For example, roughly 2/3 of this process from RFI to admit was managed by an OPM. And over time, we learned how to do them and we insourced them. We brought them back in to the university. But because we had no experience in 2009, 2010, we outsourced a lot of our operational work. Now we only outsource this tiny piece with Pearson. It's the last piece. And in 2023, we're going to end that contract. So we'll do 100% of our operations now internally.
What's the percentage probably Pearson is taking currently, if you don't mind sharing?
I'm not at liberty to say because that's a contract, a private contract.
Oh, okay. All right. No.
But we pay
Understood.
them,
Yeah.
just think of it as a performance-based contract. So if a
All
student,
performance.
yeah. So they have to deliver a student who's going to be enrolled. And we want to be successful. We don't want to generate a lot of leads. As I showed on this slide, this is the problem. If you're paying people to generate leads or interested students,
Leads.
then
Yeah.
you could spend a lot of money and get no students because the conversion rate is so
Precisely, yeah.
low. So we pay
Very
for,
low. Yeah.
yeah, we pay for performance, something like you have to have an admitted student before we pay you. But there are companies in the United States and Europe that do this. I do not know if there are companies in Africa yet. I would say it's important to look for expertise in these areas. If you find it in Nairobi, that's wonderful. If you have to go to London or to the United States to get it, then it's probably going to cost you more money. So as you're thinking about your operation, ask yourself at each layer, is there expertise in our organization for doing this? And if the answer is no, then you either have to hire someone or you have to outsource it. We were not afraid of outsourcing, and we were able to use that as a scaffolding to develop expertise. But as I mentioned, that was 13 years. So you have to also have a very long view of these things. We worked, our first contract was a 5-year contract with Pearson, and then we reduced the scope dramatically after 5 years. We insourced much of this work, and then we signed another 5-year contract to get this expertise that we still didn't have. Now, the other thing that I haven't mentioned, but it's important here, is access to investment funds. For example, some universities in the United States do not have the money to start up their own online degree program. So they partner with a company like 2U, which provides the funding to start the program. So let me give you a scenario. We pay our teachers approximately $5,000 to create a course. If we need 20 courses created, that's $100,000. That's a degree program, let's say a master's degree. If we don't have $100,000 in our budget, where will we get it? One way to get it is to partner with an online program manager. And what they will do is they will invest the $100,000. And then they will get repaid over time out of the operating revenue. So they take the risk of investing that initial operating capital or construction capital, and then they get the reward by taking up to 60% of the revenue during the operating of the program. So I know that sometimes it's a big problem for our partners in the e-learning initiative. They don't have that money to invest, and having a partner with initial capital funds can be very beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a question on the principles? Yeah.
Yes.
Now, you have given us quite a number of them, and I'm really wondering, what did you decide on at the very beginning, and what came as a result of what you were going through?
Yeah.
To become a principal up to this point. Yeah.
That's a great question. The first 4 were the original principles that helped us create the operating model. With that sort of clarity on those elements, we were able then to build the initial programs and demonstrate to our colleagues that they worked. After that, we started to have problems, for example, with our administrative services, our registrar's office, our course enrollment office, our financial aid office. They all wanted students to come to campus to verify their identity. So we had to add the principle that all of those services had to be online. And that was critical because we started getting students from California and from far away, from New York, in other countries, Mexico. So you can't do this without an online administration. Those operations were not very flexible initially because they didn't need to think about that until we started setting up the online degree programs. And these things evolve over time. So as you're creating your programs, you're going to need to have a conversation with your admissions office, with your enrollment office, with your registrar, with all of your financial aid organizations, with your career services, with your library. Think about this. If you use the principle of equivalency, but your online students don't have access to your library, then you're really doing them a great disservice because they have the equal need to access the library. So working with our library, we were able to build an infrastructure that gave our students access to digital copies of library materials and other resources, search engines and databases and all the things that the library does really well. So you're looking at literally hundreds of conversations with your colleagues as you transform the organization. Now, you heard Phil Regier speak when you were here, and you understand how that leadership has been important to us. He has had these conversations as the dean of ASU Online and the head of the organization since 2009. He has had to talk to all of his colleagues at the leadership level, the head librarian, the head of admissions office, the head of the registrar, to convince them to make these changes. These do not happen naturally. These are all organizational redesigns. And eventually, over many, many years and many thousands of conversations, the team at ASU Online has built this new infrastructure for our students. You cannot expect this to happen naturally. It is an organizational change challenge, and you have to be ready to answer the same questions over and over again. Why is it important for us to offer our services to online students? Why should I change my transcript evaluation process so I can do an evaluation in 24 hours instead of 20 days? We used to have a very long process for transcript evaluation. When a student wants to transfer to Arizona State, it used to take 20 days to do it, but an online student wants that process immediately. So our entire organization, registrar's office, had to change how they evaluate transcripts. And they had to accelerate it so that instead of 20 days, they could do it in 1 day. This is the kind of thing that you don't realize when you start a process. And the first student that encounters the problem, whether it's enrollment or library access or registrar, is the one that's going to create the opportunity to change your organization. So as you work with your students, you're going to hear complaints. Well, I had to drive to Nairobi, it's 200 kilometers, because the person in the office wouldn't accept my identity online. And then you're going to have to go to that person in that office and convince them that they have to accept the online identity of your students so that they don't have to drive 200 kilometers and take an entire day of their life to do that transaction. So you're going to need to be constantly solving problems in this modality until your culture matures. And that goes back to the earlier slide I showed, which was the 3S capability analysis. As you mature, you're going to get to a point where you don't have that problem anymore. You've already solved the administrative problem. You've already solved the access problem. You've already solved the technology problem. And for us, that means we can focus on the academic opportunity. When you deal with all of those administrative problems and you solve them, you can focus all of your energy on helping the students learn. And at the end of the day, all of this work that we're doing for the e-learning initiative is about helping the students learn. And building out all of these capabilities is about trying to make it easier for them to learn. So over the last 13 years, Ed Plus and ASU Online have solved 99% of the administrative problems, and the organization can focus all of its energies on making sure the students are academically successful. And that's our goal, obviously, with you, with Rwanda, with the other organizations. We want to make sure you are confident and you're moving in the direction that you want to towards the goal that you've set for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that elaborate answer. My other question is on pricing.
Yes.
You see, initially the investment is very heavy, and an institution is actually tempted to have the online program a little bit more expensive in order to recoup the investment that they've made.
Yes.
How did that go for you? And this pricing, the last design principle there, is the pricing also the same for an online program and the face-to-face program up to now?
So the program cost for an in-state student and the online student are the same. Now, what that means in America is what we call out-of-state students, the student from California, pays 3 times more than the student from Arizona, normally. If we charge the student from Arizona $10,000 per year for enrollment, we charge the student from California $30,000 per year. When we talk about an online student, we charge them $10,000 per year, even though they live in California. So that was the decision that was made. Now, in terms of premium pricing for online, we did not want to do that because our objective was to grow. And when you increase price, you reduce demand. So as you're talking with your leadership about what is the objective of this program, if it is to make money, then pricing higher makes sense. If it is to increase access and grow your enrollment, then a lower price makes sense. Now, just to give you some context, the initial investment to create ASU Online came from the president's office. I like to use the metaphor of building a building. When you need a new building on campus, where do you get the money? You go to the bank and you say, we want to build a building. And they say, how much money do you need? And you say, we need $1 million. And they say, we'll loan you that money, but then you have to pay it back over 10 years. So you say, that's fine. I will generate enough operating revenue to pay back the building cost. And you borrow $1 million. The same thing can be said for online degree programs. You can borrow that money and then pay it back over time. Now, who is going to loan you that money? An online program manager, that's the OPM, so they might loan you the money. Your university president might loan you the money and say, I'm going to give you this amount of money to create 10 online degree programs. You have 2 years now to get them done, and I want the money back within 10 years. Those are the kinds of conversations that we've had over the last 13 years. The financial model revolves around the question, who's paying whom for what within the university? So when you get a question from your leadership about where will you get the money, you can ask them, where do you get the money to build a new classroom building? Where do you get the money to build a new laboratory building? That's what we're talking about here. We're building an instructional infrastructure that will pay for itself through growth. For us, that has been very successful. As you know, we've grown now to 65,000 approximately students enrolled in the online program, maybe even a little higher. We just heard the new number. Our provost just made the announcement. Okay, so right at 65,000. This is a long-term investment, and it's really critical as you talk about the financial model here. I want to go back to this original slide where I started. If you remember at the beginning, I mentioned how operational design and financial management are the two pieces of this process that are critical to get right. That's why I'm happy that you asked for this conversation and we were able to have it today, because it's really important for you to start to connect all of these components. What do we need money for? How will we invest it? When will it start generating revenue? How will we measure our success? When will we be able to pay that money back? Now, at this point, ASU Online is so big that it creates its own profit. And that money can get reinvested in new people, new processes, new technology, all of the things that are part of the growth. So as you grow your operation, you will start generating excess revenue. I call it profit, but it's revenue that will be reinvested into your organization. And then you can hire more instructional designers. You can hire more technologists. You can hire learning analysts. You can hire the people who are going to do your recruiting and marketing. All of these things are part of this conversation.